Alright everybody, welcome back. So it finally happened. Gaijin went ahead and gave us an air event vehicle that was actually intended to be used in air. Shocking, I know. But the last well over a year, event vehicles have all been mostly copy and paste ground attackers, and many of which were absolutely miserable to play in air. But before I get into that, let me tell you all about an app that might help some of you. Do you need Golden Eagles, but either can't or don't want to pay? You can get them for free with free Golden Eagles for War Thunder. Using the app, you can easily earn Golden Eagles for tasks like completing surveys or playing other games, and yes, it is legit. I use it myself. You can also get a starting bonus of 10 GE when you use my code 7KVGK, so go ahead and download using the link in the description and start earning those golden birds today. The Mirage 2000C-S4 is actually a pretty good event vehicle. Now, I personally prefer something more unique, like a cool prototype or something like that, but I understand there's only so many of those to go around, and in this case at least, it's not actually bad in its intended game mode. Stuff like the A-7K or the SA-25BM that I had to play were alright in tank RB, but absolutely abysmal to play in air RB. So this is really refreshing after, 5-6 events? This Mirage is functionally pretty much identical to the one you'll find at 11.7 in the tech tree, the CS5. As a matter of fact, they are so close that they not only have the same weapons kit, but they also have the exact same flight model. So if you're just looking to fly a Mirage 2000 and you don't want to grind down the entire French tree, this is going to be absolutely perfect for you. This is also a star event, so it also made it incredibly easy to actually go ahead and get. So many of y'all who are watching this video, of course, will have already been grinding for it. If you haven't, don't worry, it'll be cheap on the marketplace for a while after this before it eventually starts going up in price, so you can probably pick it up for, 20 bucks if you really want to. Flight performance wise, the Mirage is totally fine for 11.7. I've always enjoyed the way that Mirage 2000 flies. It has good AOA, of course, and at higher speeds it actually compresses a little bit, which for me is perfect because it means you can actually maintain your energy. As a Delta, it does of course bleed speed once it falls below that compression zone, so you do have to keep that in mind in a sustained dogfight. This is of course both a blessing and a curse. You can use this to your advantage to get people to overshoot, but it also makes things difficult getting a gunshot off, so you're going to have to get used to aiming the DEFAs. Even though of course it will lose to the better dogfighters like the F-16 or the Gripen out top tier, it is still very competitive flight performance, and most of the time you're not going to get into those sustained 1v1s anyways. So you may recall, I said that the C4 and the C5 of the Mirage 2000 were basically the same plane, but they have one difference: the flare count. But it's not as simple as, okay, the C4 has 54 and the C5 has 90. The beginning of the C5's countermeasures actually drop in pairs. So you only get about 8 pops more countermeasures from the C5 compared to the C4. As you can see right here, I have them side by side. The C4 drops all of its countermeasures individually, so it's not a major concern, but it's just something to note. And to be honest, 54 drops of flares, or 27 if you bring flares and chaff like I do, is going to be enough for most engagements in the first place. It's certainly a lot better than the 15 that the early F-16s get. So with the Mirage 2000C-4, you are of course getting the exact same kit as the C5. So what does that give you? 2 R530Ds and 2 Magic 2s. The R530D, of course, is your main radar missile, and it's what you're going to be getting quite a lot of your kills with, though the Magic 2 is a bit more reliable, and I'll get to that later. The R530D, I kind of see it as a side grade to the AIM-7F or M. It's just, it has a little bit more agility, but it has worse range, and it feels like it has worse tracking, but that's just one of those it feels like things where I can't say 100% for sure. But I have more people rolling to dodge these than I do the AIM-7s, although that happens with pretty much all missiles now, so there's really nothing you can do about that. When paired with the radar, they work fairly well. The radar is able to switch from pulse Doppler head-on to pulse while maintaining lock, which is a big thing for me. That's why I didn't lose lock on that Phantom right there and was still able to get the kill. So before we get to the best weapon on this plane, the Magic 2, I want to talk about the guns. So DEFAs are hit or miss with a lot of people. I am personally a fan of them. I like guns that have reliable damage. That's my big thing. If I hit somebody with a cannon, I want them to die. Even with smaller caliber guns, that's why I'm not a huge fan of 50 cals and Jess, just because they don't do reliable enough damage for my liking. Sure, you might get that fire or that pilot's night, but there's a lot of other times where you hit somebody and you will literally just get a hit or a crit. So the DEFAs doing this much damage this consistently has always given them a pretty high mark in my book, at least once they actually did reasonable damage. And it feels like with the gun changes that guns got this patch, which fixed most of the issues we were having last patch with gun damage, DEFAs really got a amazing treatment. The 5.54 also has a higher fire rate than the 5.53, which definitely helps, but overall, good guns, at least in my opinion, though they will take some getting used to when it comes to aiming, because they're relatively low velocity, you know, compared to stuff like the Vulcan. The Magic 2. This is one of the best IR missiles in the game, although of course it still does pale in comparison to stuff like, you know, the R-73 or the A-9M. It is still a very good missile. And the biggest advantage, of course, is its IRCCM. It has my personal favorite type of IRCCM, which is gate width. So another crash course for those of y'all who haven't heard about it before, there are different types of IRCCM in the game. The AIM-9M and the AAM-3 use what's called a suspension of tracking, which means if they see a flare, they close their seeker head's eye, quote unquote, and they resume tracking once the flare is outside of the seeker head. It works great when they're at a range or if they're flying in a predictable pattern, but at close range, or if they flare and then turn sharply, the missile will not see anything whenever it turns the seeker head back on. Now, the R-73 and the Magic 2, on the other hand, use what's called gate width IRCCM, which means once it comes off the rail, it shrinks down to only 0.75 degrees of field of view. Now, this does make it easier to flare when it's further away and it can still actually see the flares. But what this means is that at close range, which is what the Magic 2 is intended to be used at, right? It just physically does not see the flares. This means if you fire it from usually around 1.5 kilometers rear aspect or 1 kilometer side aspect, it's basically impossible to flare most of the time, especially with how fast the Magic accelerates. I am a massive fan of this, although it is a bit annoying to fight, because it means that if it's close enough, you cannot do anything about it. It's not like a 9M or an AAM-3 where if somebody knows what they're doing, they can just defeat it by either spamming enough flares or moving in a specific pattern. You are going to die to this thing if it gets close enough. Unlike the R-73 though, which uses the same IRCCM, the Magic 2 doesn't have nearly the same range or the same maneuverability. It's good, but not great, and it's much more limited than the R-73. Last but not least, the greatest downside of this Mirage, and every Mirage except for the new Mirage 4000, is just simply that they don't have enough missiles. Top tier is very focused on missile combat now, and so if you don't have at least 6, that severely limits your actual ability to impact the game. And especially in this case, because you only get 2 IR missiles, and IR missiles are the meta right now. Radar missiles are affected by multipath, which means that if the target is low enough, every radar missile will miss. And these aren't even the best radar missiles like, the R-27ER. This is still a great vehicle and I would recommend picking it up, but it is just something to keep in mind. You are not going to be the top dog unless you get a full down tier to 10.7, which, by the way, never happened to me. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know in the comments down below and hit that subscribe button. Sorry if it sounded a little bit stuffy. I've got some congestion stuff going on. I still haven't gotten over it. Hope you all have a great day, and peace, y'all.